By the time Mara Ellison stood before the judge, nobody at Pine Hollow Grace Chapel was calling her the little girl they had saved anymore. They called her something else: a fraud, a liar, a woman who had learned how to make trust sound like a prayer. 7 elderly people sat behind the prosecutor in church clothes, beside walkers, holding folders full of papers Mara had once promised to explain. Evelyn Marsh had lost the white house her husband painted until his hands grew too weak. Walter Givens, an old veteran who polished his shoes before Sunday service, had lost more than money. He had lost the clean name he had spent 76 years protecting. June Whitaker had lost the one thing she still believed she owned at 81, the right to decide who was allowed inside her life. No one died because of what Mara did, but in that small West Virginia town, people learned there are ways to ruin a life without taking it. Mara had not broken into strangers' homes. She had been given keys, spare keys under flower pots, keys beside medication calendars, keys pressed into her palm by trembling hands that trusted her to check the stove, sort the mail, call the doctor, stay for coffee. And Mara had smiled. She had remembered birthdays. She had spoken softly enough to sound like mercy. Years earlier, she had been the child sleeping in church basements, the girl with one backpack and no real bedroom, the one adults called troubled before they asked what had happened to her. When she told the truth, they called her dramatic. When she learned to say what they wanted, they called her sweet. Somewhere between those two names, Mara learned a dangerous lesson. Truth did not open doors. Need did, and once a door opened, she promised herself she would never be left outside again. But pain does not become innocence just because it started early. By the end, Mara knew what she was doing. She knew who trusted her. She knew which signatures were confused, which lonely people would rather believe in her than believe they had been used. The question is not whether Mara Ellison was broken. She was. The question is how a girl who once begged to be let inside became the woman who stole from everyone who opened the door. The courtroom in Mercer County was quieter than Mara Ellison expected. Outside, reporters waited on the courthouse steps. Inside, people from Pine Hollow sat shoulder to shoulder, dressed as if they had come from Sunday service instead of a sentencing hearing. Mara did not turn around. She knew where June Whitaker was sitting. She knew Walter Givens would have his hands folded in his lap. She knew Evelyn Marsh would be trying not to cry in front of strangers. The prosecutor read the names one by one. Not like a list, like a debt. Each name carried a house, a bank account, a stack of papers, a kitchen table where Mara had once been offered coffee. Each name carried someone who had believed her when she said she only wanted to help. Her defense attorney had spoken about her childhood, the trailer park, the hunger, the church basements, the mother who disappeared for days and returned with apologies that never lasted. None of it was false. Mara had been a child people failed to protect. But the judge did not let that become the whole story. This court does not sentence you for being wounded, he said. It sentences you for what you chose to do with the trust of wounded people. Mara looked down at her hands. For a moment, she was back 3 miles outside Pine Hollow, in a trailer that had once been white before rain, rust, and coal dust turned it gray. In summer, the room smelled of warm plastic and old beer. In winter, cold slipped through the walls so easily that Mara sometimes slept in her coat. Her mother, Donna Ellison, was not cruel every day. That was what made it hard to understand. Some mornings, Donna braided her hair before school and called her baby girl like the words still meant something. Some nights, she sang along to the radio while frying eggs for dinner, and Mara would think maybe this was what other families felt like. Then came the other days. Days when Donna stayed in bed with the curtains closed. Days when the cabinets held only stale crackers. Days when Mara learned not to ask where her mother had been. By 7, Mara knew which neighbors might feed her. By 8, she knew which churchwomen liked children who said thank you. By 9, she understood that needing help was not enough. You had to need it in a way adults could stand to look at. The wound that changed Mara happened on a Tuesday morning in 4th grade, in the school office, under fluorescent lights. Mara told her teacher she had not eaten dinner in 2 days. She said Donna had locked her out the night before. For one brief second, the teacher's face softened, and Mara believed the truth had finally opened a door. Then Donna arrived. She wore clean jeans, lipstick, and the tired expression of a mother being unfairly accused. She makes things up, Donna said gently. She always has. She wants attention. The teacher looked at Mara differently after that. Not with hatred. That might have been easier. With doubt. The adults did not call her evil. They called her dramatic, which meant they could pity her without believing her. They could send her home and still feel kind. On the ride back to the trailer, Donna kept both hands on the wheel. You keep telling stories, she said, and one day nobody will believe a word you say. Mara stared out the window at the wet road and the houses with porch lights glowing in daylight. She did not have language for betrayal. She only knew that she had told the truth, and the truth had been handed back to her like something dirty. After that, Mara became careful. She still needed food. She still needed rides. She still needed places to sleep when Donna vanished. But she stopped asking plainly. She learned which parts of pain made adults uncomfortable and which parts made them generous. She learned that silence before tears worked better than tears alone. She learned that gratitude made people feel safe. That was not the day Mara became guilty, but it was the day she began to confuse being believed with being saved. Years later, when old hands placed spare keys in her palm, Mara would still be carrying the lesson of that school office. Tell the truth, and they may send you back. Become what they need, and they may let you stay. After the school office, Mara did not stop needing help. She only stopped trusting the shape help usually came in. Pine Hollow was the kind of town where people knew which families were struggling, but knowing did not always become action. At the grocery store, women from church lowered their voices when Donna Ellison walked by. At the laundromat, people noticed when Mara's sleeves were too short, or when her shoes had split near the toes. They noticed the hunger in her face, but noticing was easier than stepping inside another woman's trouble. So Mara learned to live in the space between concern and rescue. On Wednesdays, there was a meal in the fellowship hall at Pine Hollow Grace Chapel. Paper plates, weak lemonade, green beans from a can, rolls warmed in foil. Mara never arrived first. First looked desperate. She waited until the room was full enough that no one could tell whether she had come for worship, company, or food. Then she moved carefully through the adults, smiling when smiled at, quiet when quiet was expected. She learned that old women liked children who listened. She learned that if she ate too fast, someone might look at her with pity, and pity could turn sour if it made the giver uncomfortable. So she ate slowly, even when her stomach hurt. There were homes in town where Mara became almost welcome. Mrs. Dale, near the post office, kept peanut butter crackers in a tin and pretended she had bought too many. The McCreary twins' mother let Mara stay after school if she helped fold towels. A deacon's wife gave her a winter coat with a broken zipper and said it had belonged to a niece, though Mara knew the niece was half her size. These were not cruel people. That made the lesson more complicated. Kindness came to Mara in scraps: a coat, a plate, an hour on someone's couch, a ride home in the rain. But almost every kindness arrived with an invisible clock ticking behind it. Stay too long, and the room changed. Ask for too much, and the adult's face tightened. Tell too much truth, and people remembered they had their own families to protect. Mara became skilled at leaving before she was asked. By 10, she could sense when patience was nearly empty. By 12, she had learned that the safest place in any room was near the door. Donna watched these skills grow in her daughter with a strange mixture of pride and resentment. "You always know how to make people feel sorry for you," she said once, while Mara stood in the kitchen wearing the donated coat. Mara wanted to say she hated being sorry-looking. She wanted to say she would rather have a mother who bought her a coat than strangers who pitied her into one. But children in Donna's trailer learned that honest sentences could start fires, so Mara swallowed the words. The first thing Donna sold was not important to anyone but Mara. It was a pink music box from Mrs. Dale, with a little plastic ballerina inside that turned when the lid opened. Mara loved it because it was the first object anyone had given her without saying it had to be shared. For 3 weeks, she kept it under her bed. Then it disappeared. Donna said she had not seen it. 2 days later, Mara saw the same music box on a table at the flea market beside old ashtrays and cracked mugs. She recognized the chipped corner. She recognized the tiny place where she had written M.E. in blue marker on the bottom. She did not make a scene. Something in her had already learned that scenes belonged to people who expected to be defended. After that, other things vanished. A pair of church shoes, a box of colored pencils, a sweater from the McCreary house, birthday money folded inside a library book. Donna always had a reason. Rent, gas, groceries. A bill Mara was too young to understand. Sometimes the reason was almost true, which made the stealing harder to name. Each time, Mara felt the same lesson settle deeper. Nothing given to her was safe just because it was hers. So she began to hide what mattered. Coins went inside the hem of an old curtain. Notes from teachers were taped beneath a dresser drawer. A small silver keychain from the church lost and found was buried in a coffee can behind the trailer. Mara did not know why she kept it. It did not open anything she knew of. But it was metal. It was solid. It felt like a promise that one day she might own a way in. This was also when she began to lie with intention. Small lies at first. No, she had not seen the $5 on the counter. No, she had eaten already. Yes, her mother was coming to the parent meeting. Yes, everything was fine. Some lies protected Donna. Some protected Mara from Donna. Some protected the adults around her from having to choose between believing her and doing something about it. And some lies simply made life easier. That was the part Mara would not understand until much later. Survival had taught her to bend the truth, but comfort taught her to enjoy the bend. A well-placed sentence could soften a face. A pause could make someone fill in the story for her. A tear, held back until the exact right moment, could open a pantry, a guest room, a purse, a heart. She was still a child, but she was becoming fluent in need. One December night, Donna left for what she called a quick errand and did not come back before dark. The furnace had stopped working. Mara wrapped herself in 2 towels and sat on the kitchen floor, waiting for headlights. When Donna came in laughing with a man Mara did not know, neither of them noticed the cold first. They noticed Mara. The man said, "She always stare like that?" Donna laughed again, too bright. Mara took the towels back to the bathroom and did not come out until she heard the radio turn up in the kitchen. That night, she slept with her shoes on, not because anyone told her to leave, but because leaving quickly was sometimes the only way to feel safe. The next morning, at church, June Whitaker asked why Mara looked so tired. Mara could have told the truth. Instead, Mara smiled. "Just stayed up reading," she said. June touched her cheek with the back of 2 fingers, soft and careful. "You always were a tough little thing," June said. Mara felt the words enter her like both praise and warning. Tough meant no one had to worry too much. Tough meant she could survive what other children should not have to survive. Tough meant the adults could admire her strength instead of asking who had forced her to grow it. So Mara became tough in the way Pine Hollow understood. Polite, watchful, useful, grateful. Never too angry, never too honest. Always ready to become whatever the room needed her to be. And underneath all of it, she kept a private inventory. Who had a spare room, who kept cash in a jar, who left keys under planters, who trusted too easily. At first, the list was not criminal. It was a child's map of possible shelter. But maps do not choose where they lead. People do. And Mara Ellison, long before she would admit it, had begun to learn the town by its openings. By the time Mara was 13, she no longer thought of the trailer as home. It was an address. A place where her clothes were kept in a trash bag near the closet. A place where Donna sometimes remembered to buy milk, and sometimes forgot there was a child who needed breakfast before school. A place Mara returned to because the law, the school, and the church all agreed that children belonged with their mothers unless something became bad enough to write down. The problem was that Mara's life was rarely bad in a way people could easily record. It was bad in pauses. In the way Donna stopped speaking when certain men came over. In the way Mara learned which floorboards creaked near the hallway. In the way the television grew louder when adults wanted a child to understand she should disappear without being told. The man who stayed longest was named Ray Collier. He drove a tow truck, wore the same brown jacket every day, and treated the trailer like a place he had already paid for. He did not have to shout to change the air in a room. When Ray entered, Donna became smaller and louder at the same time, laughing too hard, touching her hair, pretending not to notice when Mara slipped out of the kitchen. Ray called Mara church girl, because she spent so much time around Pine Hollow Grace Chapel. At first, he said it like a joke. Later, he said it like an accusation. "You think those people are better than us?" he asked one evening while Mara washed a plate that was not hers. Mara kept her eyes on the sink. "No, sir." The sir came automatically. She had learned that respect, even false respect, could sometimes keep a room from turning. Ray smiled at Donna. "Polite little thing," he said. "Bet she knows how to get whatever she wants." Donna laughed, but Mara heard something bitter inside it. After that, the trailer became a place of careful timing. Mara left early for school and stayed late when she could. She volunteered to stack chairs after Wednesday meals at church. She helped Mrs. Dale carry groceries. She sat in the library until the librarian began turning off lights. Every delay was a small act of survival, but delaying home was not the same as escaping it. One February night, snow came down thin and sharp, the kind that did not look dangerous until it had covered the road. Mara had been at church helping fold bulletins. She walked back to the trailer with her hands tucked under her arms, rehearsing the quiet entrance she had perfected. Door open, shoes off, no questions, no eye contact, straight to the corner where she slept. But when she reached the trailer, the door was locked. Light spilled from the kitchen window. She could hear Donna's laugh inside, then Ray's voice, low and annoyed. Mara knocked once. The room went quiet. She waited. A minute passed, then another. Donna opened the door only wide enough for half her face. "Not tonight," she whispered. Mara stared at her. "What?" Donna's eyes moved over her shoulder, toward the room behind her. "Go to Mrs. Dale's. Go to the church. Just don't start something right now." The door closed before Mara could answer. For a while, she stood there under the weak porch light, snow gathering on her hair, trying to understand how a mother could see her child outside in the cold and still choose the room behind her. Then she walked. Mrs. Dale's house was dark. The McCreary's porch light was off. Mara did not knock. She could already imagine the tired face, the question, the phone call to Donna, the embarrassment of being returned like a borrowed thing. So she went to Pine Hollow Grace Chapel. The chapel sat at the edge of town, white wood, green roof, a bell tower that had not rung in years. Mara tried the front doors first. Locked. Then the side entrance near the fellowship hall. Locked. She checked the kitchen door, the classroom wing, the small office entrance where Pastor Eli sometimes forgot to pull hard enough. Locked. That was the night something inside Mara changed shape. Not all at once. Not dramatically. There was no speech, no vow spoken into the snow. Only a child sitting on the church steps with her knees pulled to her chest, looking at a building full of blankets, heat, food, and empty rooms, understanding that safety could be inches away and still unavailable if nobody had decided she deserved access. By morning, her fingers were stiff, and her throat hurt from breathing cold air. Pastor Eli found her when he arrived to unlock the chapel, his face filled with shock, then guilt, then the kind of busy kindness adults used when they did not want to stand too long inside what they had missed. "Mara, honey, why didn't you call someone?" She almost laughed. "Call whom?" But she lowered her eyes and said, "I didn't want to bother anybody." That answer worked. It made Pastor Eli sad without making him responsible. He brought her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and called Donna, who arrived an hour later with tears ready and a story about confusion, bad weather, and a door that must have stuck. Everyone looked relieved when there was an explanation. Mara watched them accept it. That afternoon, while helping clean the fellowship hall, she saw the small brass key hanging from a hook inside the supply closet. It belonged to the side entrance. She knew because she had watched Pastor Eli use it before. Her hand moved before her conscience did. She slipped the key into her coat pocket. For the rest of the day, it felt heavy against her ribs. During supper, while Donna complained about the cold, Mara touched the pocket twice to make sure it was still there. That night, in the trailer, she hid it inside the lining of her old backpack. She knew it was wrong. That mattered. But wrong, to Mara, had become a word adults used after they had already survived the night. Wrong belonged to people with bedrooms, working furnaces, and mothers who opened doors. The key did not make her greedy at first. It made her calm. On nights when Donna and Ray filled the trailer with noise, Mara imagined the side door of the chapel opening under her hand. On nights when Donna forgot dinner, Mara imagined the fellowship hall pantry, the folded tablecloths, the couch in the nursery room. She did not always use the key. Sometimes, just knowing she had it was enough. That was the dangerous part. The key taught Mara a lesson no sermon ever corrected. Being invited was fragile. Having access was safer. For the next year, Mara carried that lesson quietly. She still smiled at church. She still helped clean. She still thanked the women who fed her and let Pastor Eli believe his chapel had remained innocent in her mind. But the building had changed for her. It was no longer only a place of worship or charity. It was a place with locks, schedules, blind spots, and adults who wanted to be kind without being inconvenienced. Mara began to understand that every safe place had a system. Every system had gaps. And every gap, if you were cold enough, could begin to look like mercy. She was not yet the woman who would take houses, names, and savings from people who trusted her. She was still a girl with an old backpack and one stolen key. But for the first time, Mara Ellison possessed a way into a place nobody had chosen to open. And once she felt that power in her hand, she never forgot it. June Whitaker did not rescue Mara all at once. She did it in small, ordinary ways that made the rescue harder for Mara to distrust. At first, June only asked her to carry hymnals after Sunday service. Then she asked if Mara wanted leftover biscuits wrapped in foil. Then came a ride home during rain, a sweater that smelled like lavender soap, an invitation to sit at the kitchen table while June finished making soup. June was 81, though she moved around her little house-like age had simply become part of the furniture. She had silver hair pinned low at her neck, thin hands, and a way of looking at people that made lies feel both easier and harder. Easier because she wanted to believe the good. Harder because disappointing her felt like stepping on something clean. Her house sat 2 streets behind the chapel, white with blue shutters and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Inside, everything had a place, bills in a wooden tray, medicine bottles lined beside the sink, her late husband's photograph on the mantel, a ceramic bowl near the door where she kept peppermints, loose change, and spare keys. Mara noticed all of it. She always noticed. But in the beginning, noticing did not feel like planning. It felt like trying to understand how safe people lived. The room June gave her was small and painted pale blue. There was a narrow bed, a quilt with faded yellow flowers, and a lamp shaped like a seashell. On the first night, Mara stood in the doorway with her backpack against her leg, waiting for the condition. Every kindness had one. June only said, "You can put your things in the dresser if you want." Mara did not move. The dresser had 3 drawers. Empty drawers. Not a trash bag, not a borrowed corner. Not a shelf someone could clear when patience ran out. June seemed to understand something without making Mara explain it. "No rush," she said. "Takes time for a room to feel like yours." That sentence nearly broke Mara, not because it was grand, but because it was gentle in a way that did not ask her to perform gratitude. June did not make Mara tell the story again. She did not ask whether Donna had changed. She did not call Mara tough. She simply gave her soup, clean towels, and a door that closed from the inside. For several weeks, Mara became the best version of herself. She washed dishes before June asked. She swept the porch. She sat with June during evening game shows and listened to stories about Mr. Whitaker, who had built the back steps himself and planted the dogwood tree the year they married. Mara liked those stories. They made the house feel older than pain. Sometimes she imagined staying. Not forever. Mara had learned not to trust forever, but long enough to finish school, long enough to own more than she could carry, long enough to become someone people mentioned with pride instead of concern. Then Donna came back. She appeared one afternoon near the grocery store, thinner than before, her lipstick cracked at the corners, her eyes bright with need. She hugged Mara too tightly and called her baby girl in a voice that made Mara feel 10 years old and guilty. "I just need a little help," Donna said. Mara knew what that meant. At first, she said no. She really did. She said she did not have money. She said June was helping her. She said she could not bring trouble to that house. Donna's face changed. "So now you're better than me?" The words struck exactly where Donna knew they would. Mara felt shame rise in her throat. Donna talked about rent, medicine, a man who might come looking, a debt that would get worse if she did not handle it. Some of it might have been true. With Donna, truth and performance often wore the same dress. Mara gave her the few dollars she had. It was not enough. That evening, June asked Mara to place an envelope from the church benevolence fund into the wooden tray by the phone. It was meant for a family whose power had been cut off. Mara held it for 3 seconds too long. She could feel the money inside. She could also feel the blue room waiting upstairs. Later, when June went to the bathroom, Mara opened the envelope. She took only part of it. That mattered to her then. Taking all would have made her a thief. Taking some allowed her to call it borrowing. She gave the money to Donna the next morning behind the laundromat. Donna cried. Then she kissed Mara's forehead and disappeared again. By afternoon, Mara already hated herself. She told herself she would replace it. She would ask for extra work. She would find a way before anyone noticed. But the problem with a lie is that it begins asking for shelter the moment it is born. 2 days later, June stood in the kitchen holding the envelope. "Mara," she said softly, "did you move any of the money from this?" The room seemed to narrow. Mara could have told the truth. She could have said Donna came back. She could have said she was scared. She could have said she made a terrible mistake and did not know how to fix it. June might have been angry. She might have cried. She might have called Pastor Eli. But June would not have thrown her into the snow. Some part of Mara knew that. Another part, older and colder, did not believe it. So Mara looked at the envelope, then at June's worried face, and shook her head. "No." June studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right," she said. "I believe you." Those 3 words should have saved Mara. Instead, they taught her something dangerous. June's trust did not close around Mara like a judgment. It opened around her like shelter. And because Mara was terrified of losing shelter, she let the lie move in first. That night, she lay awake in the blue room, staring at the dresser drawers she had finally begun to use. Her stomach hurt. Her chest hurt. She thought about walking downstairs, waking June, and confessing before the lie became part of the house. But the house was warm. The quilt smelled clean. For once, nobody was telling her to leave. So Mara stayed quiet. It was a small theft, a small lie, a small betrayal compared to what would come later. But every locked door in Mara's life had taught her to fear being put outside. And now, for the first time, she had chosen to protect her place inside by damaging the person who had let her in. That was the first fall. Not because Mara could not have told the truth, because she could have, and didn't. For a little while, Mara Ellison looked saved. That was how Pine Hollow Grace Chapel began to speak about her. Not officially, not from the pulpit, but in the soft language people used after service while folding napkins and rinsing coffee cups. June Whitaker had taken that poor Ellison girl in. The girl was doing well. She was polite. She helped around the house. She might still make something of herself. Mara heard pieces of it when people thought she was too far away to listen. She did not know whether to feel grateful or trapped. Being a success story was safer than being a problem, but it came with rules. A success story had to smile. A success story could not be too angry, too needy, too complicated. A success story did not get to admit that some nights she still hid food in her drawer or woke up afraid June had changed her mind. June never asked Mara to become a symbol. That was the church's doing. June only asked her to finish school, come home when she said she would, and stop apologizing every time she opened the refrigerator. "You live here," June told her one evening. "You don't have to act like a visitor every time you need a glass of milk." Mara nodded, but she did not believe it completely. Need had always come with a bill. She just had not found June's yet. The first real door back opened through work. June had a friend named Evelyn Marsh, a widow whose husband had left behind a white house, a neat garden, and more paperwork than Evelyn knew how to manage. Evelyn's hands shook when she sorted mail. Her eyes tired easily. June asked Mara if she could stop by twice a week to read notices aloud and mark due dates on a calendar. Mara said yes. She was good at it. That surprised no one more than Mara. She remembered names, appointments, pills, birthdays. She knew how to sit quietly while an old person searched for a word. She knew when to offer help and when to let pride remain intact. With Evelyn, she learned how grief lived inside ordinary objects: a work shirt behind a door, a coffee mug no one else used, a paintbrush wrapped in newspaper in the shed. Evelyn began to trust her. Then Walter Givens did. Walter was a retired veteran with polished shoes, a straight back, and a voice that still carried command even when age had softened the edges. He did not like admitting that insurance forms confused him. He did not like asking Pastor Eli for help. But Mara called him Sir, waited while he read slowly, and never made him feel foolish. Soon, other people asked for her. At first it was errands, then calendars, then phone calls to utility companies, then folders left on kitchen tables for Mara to look over when she had time. Spare keys appeared naturally, almost innocently, under flower pots, behind loose bricks, on hooks near back doors. Sometimes they were pressed directly into Mara's hand. In case I fall, in case I forget, in case you need to get in. Every key felt different from the one she had stolen from the chapel. These were not taken, they were given. That should have made them cleaner. Instead, it made them more powerful. Mara began to understand something she did not want to name. People trusted usefulness faster than goodness. If she made their lives easier, they gave her access. If she remembered what their children forgot, they gave her affection. If she listened long enough, they gave her secrets. And with every secret came a map, not a criminal map yet, a map of needs: who feared nursing homes, who could not read fine print, who had children far away, who kept checkbooks in unlocked drawers, who hated sounding confused on the phone. Mara told herself that knowing these things made her better at helping. Most days, that was true. But not all truth stays innocent after it becomes useful. Carla Mendez was the first person to say it out loud. Carla was a community nurse, practical and sharp-eyed, with a voice that did not soften just because someone was young and wounded. She met Mara at Evelyn's house one afternoon and watched as Evelyn asked Mara to explain a bank notice before Carla had even taken off her coat. Afterward, on the porch, Carla said, "You're doing a lot for them." Mara smiled carefully. "They need help." "I know, but needing help doesn't mean they should hand over everything." Mara felt heat rise under her skin. "I'm not taking anything. I didn't say you were." But Mara heard it anyway. She heard trailer park girl. She heard dramatic. She heard liar before Carla ever used the word. Carla kept her voice level. Boundaries protect them, they protect you too. Mara almost laughed. Boundaries were something safe people invented to make distance sound moral. Nobody had protected Mara with boundaries when Donna disappeared. Nobody had drawn a boundary between a hungry child and a locked door. So she nodded the way she had learned to nod when adults wanted to feel wise. Then she ignored the warning. Worse, she began to work around it. When Evelyn complained that Carla was bossy, Mara did not defend her. When Walter said he did not like strangers looking through his things, Mara said Carla meant well, but some people did not understand how families worked in Pine Hollow. The word families did its job. It made Mara sound loyal. It made Carla sound cold. The trust around Mara deepened. That should have frightened her. Instead, it comforted her. For the first time, Mara was not waiting outside someone else's life. She was inside many lives at once, needed in kitchens, expected at appointments, welcomed through side doors. People saved her a plate at church dinners and asked her opinion about forms they had not shown their own children. June watched it happen with pride. "You have a gift," she told Mara. Mara wanted that to be true. She wanted her gift to be kindness, patience, the ability to make lonely people feel less alone. She wanted to believe that the same skills she had learned in hunger could become useful without becoming dangerous. But gifts are not pure just because they began in pain. By the end of that summer, Mara had more keys than she had ever owned in her life. Some she kept on a ring, some she memorized and left where they were. Some were not keys at all, but numbers, passwords, habits, fears. She did not use them wrongly yet, but she had begun to enjoy the wait. And that enjoyment was the first warning Mara refused to hear. Donna Ellison came back into Mara's life the way bad weather came over Pine Hollow. Not suddenly, not honestly. First, there were rumors. Someone saw Donna outside the gas station on Route 19. Someone else said she had been staying with a cousin near Beckley. Pastor Eli mentioned her name carefully one Sunday, as if he were placing a cracked cup on a table and hoping Mara would not notice the sound. Mara noticed everything. For almost 2 years, she had been building a life that did not smell like Donna. June's house smelled like lemon cleaner, old books, and soup. Evelyn's kitchen smelled like coffee. Walter's living room smelled like furniture polish and the peppermint candies he kept in a dish by his chair. These were clean smells, ordered smells, smells that belonged to people whose lives had not been packed into trash bags and carried from porch to porch. Then Donna appeared behind the laundromat. She was thinner than Mara remembered. Her hair had been dyed a flat brown that made her face look older. She wore a coat too light for the season and held a cigarette between 2 fingers, though she did not light it. The first thing Mara felt was not love. It was shame. Donna smiled when she saw her. "Well, look at you," she said. "Church girl, all grown up." Mara looked around to make sure no one from Pine Hollow Grace Chapel was nearby. That small movement told Donna more than Mara meant to give away. "You embarrassed of me now?" "No," Mara said too quickly. Donna laughed without humor. "Sure." They stood near the side wall where dryers hummed through the brick. Donna said she had been sick. She said she had lost work. She said a man she owed money to was not the kind of man who waited politely. Some of it sounded true. Some of it sounded rehearsed. With Donna, Mara had learned that a lie did not need to be completely false to be dangerous. "I just need a little help," Donna said. Mara hated those words. She hated them because she had said versions of them her whole childhood. She hated them because Donna made need sound like a hook in the skin. "I don't have money," Mara said. Donna's eyes sharpened. "Don't lie to me. Everybody in town talks. You're taking care of half those old people now. They trust you." The word trust made Mara feel exposed. "I helped them," she said. Donna stepped closer. "Then help me." That should have been the moment Mara went to June. She could have told her everything. Donna was back. Donna wanted money. Donna knew how to make her feel small. June might have been disappointed, but she would have understood fear. She had already given Mara more mercy than Mara knew what to do with. But asking June for help would mean letting the old life into the blue room. It would mean admitting that Mara Ellison, the girl Pine Hollow praised for becoming responsible, still belonged to Donna in some hidden place. It would mean risking the look Mara feared most. Not anger, but pity turning tired. So Mara handled it alone. At first, she gave Donna her own cash. Then she sold a necklace June had given her, telling herself June would never notice because Mara rarely wore it. Then Donna came back again. And again. Each time, the story changed. A doctor bill, a motel room, a debt, a warning. A promise that this would be the last time. Last times became a language Mara wanted to believe. The first larger amount came from Evelyn Marsh's account. Mara did not think of it as stealing when she did it. That was important to her. She thought of it as moving money temporarily from a place where it was sitting safely to a crisis that would swallow her if she did not feed it. Evelyn had more than she needed this week. Mara needed enough to keep Donna away from June's porch, away from Pastor Eli's questions, away from the life Mara had worked so hard to make clean. She told herself she would put it back. She even wrote the number down. For 3 days, the folded papers stayed under her mattress like a promise. On the 4th day, Donna called again. By the end of the week, Mara tore the paper into pieces and flushed it. That was the moment the lie changed. Before, Mara's lies had been shelters, small rooms built around fear. Now the lie needed maintenance. It needed calendars, excuses, careful phone calls, quick smiles, and a version of Mara who could look Evelyn in the eye while helping her mark a doctor's appointment on the same morning Mara knew money was missing. Evelyn made it worse by being kind. "You're such a blessing," she told Mara one afternoon, patting her hand. "My Herald used to say good people show up before you know how to ask." Mara almost pulled away. Instead, she smiled. The smile frightened her more than the theft, because it came easily. That night, Mara sat on the edge of the blue bed in June's house and tried to pray. No words came. She pictured Evelyn opening a bank statement and frowning at the numbers. She pictured June asking a question Mara could not answer. She pictured Donna standing on the porch, calling her baby girl loud enough for neighbors to hear. Fear chose for her, or that was what Mara told herself. But fear did not fill out excuses. Fear did not decide which truth to hide from which person. Fear did not make Mara avoid Carla at Evelyn's house because Carla's eyes were too direct. Fear did not make Mara place herself between Walter and a phone call he wanted to make to his bank. Mara did those things. She knew it. Even then, the hardest part was that some of her care remained real. She still brought Evelyn soup when she had a cold. She still reminded Walter to take his evening pills. She still sat with June on the porch and listened to stories about Mr. Whitaker. Mara had not become empty. That made her more dangerous, not less, because people could feel the true parts of her and mistake them for the whole. Donna vanished again near the end of summer. No goodbye, no repayment, no explanation, just silence. Mara should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt trapped inside the damage Donna had left behind. The money was not back. The records did not align. The first lie had already grown roots into other people's lives, and now there was no emergency standing in front of Mara to blame. Only choices, her choices. For one afternoon, she considered telling June. She even walked to the kitchen while June was washing peaches in the sink. Sunlight came through the window and made the water shine around June's hands. Mara stood there with her mouth open, close enough to confession that she could feel its edge. June looked over her shoulder. "You all right, sweetheart?" "Sweetheart." The word closed Mara's throat. She nodded. "I'm fine." And with that, the second door back closed. Not because nobody offered help, because Mara could not bear the cost of being known. After Donna disappeared again, Mara expected the fear to leave with her. It did not. Fear stayed in June's blue room. It sat beside Mara at Evelyn Marsh's kitchen table. It followed her into Walter Givens's living room, where the old veteran kept his bills clipped together with military neatness and apologized whenever his eyes failed to catch the small print. Mara had thought the danger was Donna. Now she understood the danger was what Donna had made necessary. The missing money had to be hidden. Then the hidden money created questions. Then the questions required answers before anyone knew enough to ask them aloud. Mara began to live two lives so closely braided together that even she sometimes forgot where one ended. In one life, she was the girl Pine Hollow Grace Chapel had saved. She brought groceries to Evelyn, changed light bulbs for June, drove Walter to the clinic when his nephew could not come. She knew who liked tea without sugar and who needed the pharmacy called before noon. In the other life, she watched. She watched where Evelyn kept unopened bank statements. She watched Walter squint at legal language and pretend he understood. She watched widows sign forms because the world had grown too fast around them and they were tired of sounding afraid. The worst part was that Mara still cared. When Evelyn cried over Harold's old work boots, Mara sat with her until the grief passed. When Walter's hands shook while buttoning his cuff before church, Mara helped without making him feel weak. When June forgot where she had put her reading glasses, Mara found them and laughed gently, not cruelly. The tenderness was real. So was the theft growing beneath it. That combination became Mara's private excuse. She told herself that bad people did not remember birthdays. Bad people did not sit through doctor's appointments. Bad people did not know exactly how lonely a house became after the person who filled it with noise was buried. If she was still kind in some places, then maybe she was not truly guilty in others. Walter Givens trusted her most openly, which made what happened with him the hardest to forgive. He had been a proud man all his life. Army service, coal work, church committees, 39 years of marriage to a woman whose picture still sat beside his lamp. He wore a suit even on ordinary weekdays if he had business at the bank. His shoes were always polished. His voice still carried the habit of command, but age had begun to take small things from him first: the sharpness of numbers, the patience for phone menus, the confidence to ask a young clerk to repeat herself. Mara knew how to protect his pride. She did not say, "You don't understand." She said, "They write these things to confuse everybody." Walter liked that. It let him stay dignified while needing help. One afternoon, he showed her a folder of documents connected to a veteran's benefit, an insurance adjustment, and an account he wanted simplified before his nephew visited in the fall. The papers were not dangerous by themselves. They became dangerous because Mara saw, in the confusion around them, a way to cover what she had already done. She did not invent the need for signatures all at once. She moved slowly, almost tenderly. She explained parts correctly. She skipped parts that would have made Walter pause. She placed one form on top of another and told him the most important thing was to keep everything protected before fees and delays ate away at it. Walter listened. Mara could see the trust in his face, and for 1 second she almost stopped. Almost. He looked at the papers, then at her. "You're sure about this?" There it was. The open door. Not to his house. Not to his account. To the last good part of Mara that still knew the difference between being afraid and doing wrong. She could have said, "Let's call your nephew." She could have said, "Let's ask Carla." She could have said, "I'm not the right person for this." Instead, she smiled softly. "I'm sure, Mr. Givens. I wouldn't let anything happen to you." He signed. The sound of the pen moving across the paper was small. Almost nothing. No scream, no broken glass, no moment that would look dramatic in a courtroom. But Mara felt something cross over inside her. Not because she had never lied before, she had. Not because she had never taken money before, she had. This was different because Walter had asked her directly whether he was safe, and Mara had used the love in his question to move him closer to harm. Afterward, he patted her hand. "You're a good girl," he said. Mara looked down. For a moment, guilt rose so sharply she thought she might be sick. She wanted to gather the papers back, tear them up, call the bank, call June, call anyone who could stop the machine she had just set moving. Then, she imagined Walter's face if he understood. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. And disappointment had always felt, to Mara, like the first sound of a door closing. So she left the papers in order. That night, she did not sleep. She sat on the floor of the blue room with her back against the bed, listening to June's old house settle around her. She pressed her palms over her eyes and tried to make one thought stay still long enough to become a confession. But every thought became a defense. Walter had enough. Walter's nephew never came when he promised. Walter needed someone. She had helped him for months. She had earned something. She would fix it before real damage happened. By morning, the guilt had not vanished. It had changed shape. It had become a plan. That was when Mara became truly dangerous. Not when she felt nothing, but when she learned she could feel guilty and continue anyway. In the weeks that followed, she grew calmer on the outside. She became better at arranging the lives around her so no one person saw the whole picture. Evelyn thought Mara was helping Walter. Walter thought June knew more than she did. June believed Mara was simply overworked and devoted. Pastor Eli praised her from the edges of sermons without using her name. Only Carla kept watching. At Evelyn's house, Carla noticed a bank notice turned face down beneath a cookbook. At Walter's, she noticed Mara answering a question before Walter had finished asking it. At church, she noticed how often people said, "Mara handles that for me now." One day, Carla caught Mara in the chapel hallway. "You need to step back," she said. Mara's smile tightened. "From what?" "From all of it. You're too close." Mara wanted to tell her she was wrong. But the problem was, Carla was not wrong. Not completely. That made Mara hate her more. "You don't know what they need," Mara said. Carla's face did not change. "I know what dependence looks like when someone starts mistaking it for love." The words stayed with Mara long after Carla walked away. Dependence. Love. Maybe Carla thought there was a difference because she had never been cold enough to stop caring. Mara told herself that. Then she went back to Walter's house, unlocked the side door with the key he had given her, and stepped inside before he could reach the hallway. He smiled when he saw her. That smile should have warned her. Instead, it steadied her. Because power, Mara was beginning to learn, did not always feel like cruelty. Sometimes it felt like being needed so completely that no one thought to ask whether they should be afraid. June Whitaker did not find the truth all at once. She found it in small, wrong things. An envelope Evelyn Marsh said Mara had taken to the bank, though the bank claimed no one had come. A notice Walter Givens did not remember signing, folded too neatly in a drawer where he kept only military records. A receipt with Mara's handwriting on the back. A sentence from Carla Mendez, spoken quietly after Sunday service. "You need to look closer," Carla told her. June did not want to. That was the first truth. She loved Mara in the complicated way older women sometimes love wounded girls who arrive at their kitchen tables with empty hands and careful manners. June had watched Mara learn to sleep without shoes on. She had watched her stop flinching when cupboards closed. She had watched her grow into someone the church praised, and June had allowed herself to believe that love, given steadily enough, could teach a person how to stay. So when the first doubts came, June treated them like cold drafts in an old house. Something to seal, not something to fear. But then Evelyn cried at June's kitchen table. Evelyn did not cry loudly. She was too proud for that. She sat with both hands around a cup of tea, staring into it as if the answer might float to the surface. "I don't understand these papers," she said. "Mara said it was just to keep things organized. But Harold's house, June, I don't know what I signed." June felt the words move through her slowly. Harold's house. Not money. Not a number. A life. The White House Evelyn's husband had painted every spring until his hands failed him. The porch where he had shelled peas. The bedroom where Evelyn still kept his robe on the back of the chair because removing it felt too final. June called at Walter that evening. He sounded embarrassed before he sounded afraid. "I reckon I got confused," he said. "Mara explained it, but maybe I didn't listen right." June closed her eyes. There it was again. Mara had explained. Mara had handled. Mara had promised. That night, June sat at her dining table with a yellow legal pad, writing down dates, names, and questions. She did not sleep. By morning, the house looked the same, but nothing inside it felt untouched. Mara came in after breakfast carrying groceries. "Got your peaches," she said, setting the bag on the counter. They finally had good ones. June looked at her from across the kitchen. For one terrible second, she saw both Maras at once. The girl who had stood in the doorway of the blue room with a backpack against her leg, and the woman whose name now appeared in too many frightened conversations. "Mara," June said. "Sit down." Mara's hands stilled on the grocery bag. "What's wrong?" June wanted to ask gently. She wanted to make room for the truth to enter without breaking everything. But age had taught her that some doors only opened if you stopped pretending they were not locked. "I talked to Evelyn," June said. "And Walter." Mara's face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. June did not. The girl recovered fast. "About what?" "About papers they signed. About money they don't understand. About things you told them you would explain." Mara looked toward the window over the sink. June knew that look. It was the look of someone searching for the safest version of a lie. "June, they get confused sometimes." The sentence hurt more than June expected. Not because it was clever, because it was cruel. June folded her hands on the table to keep them from shaking. "I am going to ask you one time," she said, "and I need you to love me enough to tell the truth." Mara looked back at her then. The kitchen seemed too small for all the years between them. The soup, the clean towels, the winter coat. The first night Mara slept upstairs. The birthdays June remembered because Donna never did. The little blue room that had become, for a while, the closest thing Mara had to mercy. "What did you do?" June asked. Mara's mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was the moment. Not the courtroom. Not the sentence. Not the day people in Pine Hollow would lower their voices when they said Mara's name. This was the moment when Mara Ellison could still have become someone else. She could have told June about Donna, about the first money, about Evelyn, about Walter, about the fear that had become a system before she understood how far it had spread. She could have cried. And June would have cried too. There would have been consequences. Police, maybe. Lawyers, probably. Shame, certainly. But there also might have been one thing left unbroken. The truth between them. June reached across the table. "I can't promise this won't hurt," she said. "But I can go with you. To Pastor Eli, to Carla, to whoever we need. If you stop now, I will go with you." Mara looked at June's hand. The old skin. The blue veins. The wedding ring still worn thin from decades of dishes, laundry, and grief. For a moment, Mara wanted to take it. She wanted to lay her head on the table like a child and let the whole ugly thing come out of her. She wanted someone else to carry the truth, even if carrying it meant walking into punishment. But then she saw the other side of confession. Evelyn's face. Walter's silence. Pastor Eli's disappointment. Carla's knowing eyes. The church women whispering that they should have known blood would tell. The blue room becoming a room she once had, not a room she could return to. Mara felt the old terror rise. Not guilt. Terror. The fear of being put outside after finally believing she was in. So she pulled her hand away from June's. I don't know what Carla told you, Mara said, her voice quiet. But she's been looking for something wrong with me from the beginning. June stared at her. Mara kept going because stopping would have meant hearing herself. Evelyn forgets things. Walter gets embarrassed when he doesn't understand. I help them, June. I do everything for them. The words sounded almost true. That was how Mara knew they might work. June's face did not harden. It did something worse. It fell. Mara, she whispered. Just her name. No accusation inside it yet. Only grief. Mara stood. I need to put the groceries away. No, June said. The word was soft, but it stopped her. June looked older than she had that morning. If you walk out of this kitchen without telling me the truth, something between us changes. I need you to understand that. Mara did understand. That was why she could not stay. She picked up her purse, left the peaches sweating on the counter, and walked out through the back door of the house that had once saved her. Outside, the air was warm. Children were shouting somewhere down the street. A lawnmower started 2 houses away. Ordinary life continued with a cruelty Mara had never been able to forgive. She made it half a block before the tears came. They were real, but real tears do not make a person honest. By the time Mara reached the corner, she was already thinking of what June might say, who might believe her, and how to make doubt arrive before truth did. Mara did not decide to destroy June Whitaker in one clean thought. That would have been easier to hate. It began as preparation. That was what she called it in her mind. She was preparing for questions, preparing for misunderstandings, preparing for the way old people sometimes got confused and frightened when papers became too complicated. The words sounded gentle enough. Confused, frightened, complicated. Mara had learned long ago that the right words could soften almost anything before people saw its shape. The next Sunday, she arrived at Pine Hollow Grace Chapel early. She helped set out coffee. She asked Evelyn whether she had slept. She touched Walter's elbow and reminded him where he had left his bulletin. She stood beside June during the opening hymn and sang quietly, as if nothing in the world had shifted. June did not sing. That frightened Mara more than anger would have. After service, Pastor Eli asked Mara if she had a minute. June stood near him, one hand closed around her purse strap. Carla Mendez was there too, arms folded, eyes steady. Mara understood immediately. The room chosen for the conversation was the small classroom behind the fellowship hall, the same room where children colored pictures of Noah's Ark and taped them to the wall. Sunlight came through the blinds in pale stripes. Someone had left a box of crayons on the table. It was almost cruel how innocent the room looked. Pastor Eli cleared his throat. June has raised some concerns, he said. Mara looked at June, not Carla. Carla she could hate. Carla had always looked too closely. But June was harder. June had seen her hungry. June had seen her sleeping in clean sheets for the first time. June knew the girl before the woman had learned to survive her. What concerns? Mara asked. June's face was pale, but her voice did not shake. You know what concerns. Carla placed a small folder on the table. There are patterns, Mara. Mara smiled faintly. Patterns? Money moved. Papers signed without full understanding. People being told different things. Mara let silence sit for a moment. She had learned that rushing made guilt look nervous. Then she turned back to June. Is this what you think of me? The question did exactly what she wanted. Pastor Eli looked uncomfortable. June closed her eyes, as if the words had touched an old bruise. Mara, June said, I asked you in my kitchen. I gave you the chance to tell me. You gave me a chance to confess to something Carla already decided I did. Carla's jaw tightened, but she did not speak. June stepped closer to the table. No, she said. I gave you a chance to tell the truth before the truth had to be dragged out of you. That sentence landed hard. For a second, Mara saw the whole room clearly. The crayons, the blinds, Pastor Eli's worried hands, Carla's folder, June's grief. She could still stop, even now. Not without damage, not without punishment. But she could still stop adding to it. Then June said the words that broke whatever restraint was left. You are not a scared child anymore, Mara. You are a liar with a house key. The room went silent. Mara felt the phrase strike deeper than accusation. A liar. Not dramatic this time. Not confused. Not misunderstood. A liar. The old school office rose inside her with terrible clarity. Donna in clean jeans, the teacher's doubtful eyes, the ride home, the warning that one day nobody would believe a word she said. Mara felt 13 again, 10 again, small enough to be sent back and old enough to understand that nobody was coming. But this time, Mara was not powerless. That was the difference. She looked at June's trembling hand on the back of the chair. She looked at the folder Carla had brought. She looked at Pastor Eli, who wanted desperately for this to be a misunderstanding because misunderstanding was easier to forgive than betrayal. And Mara chose. Not blindly. Not because she did not know better, because she knew exactly which wound to touch. June, she said softly, you've been forgetting things for months. June stared at her. Mara hated herself the moment she said it. Then she continued. You asked me 3 times last week where your checkbook was. You forgot Evelyn had already called you about the papers. You told me Walter signed something he says he doesn't remember signing. I didn't want to embarrass you. Pastor Eli's face shifted. Not belief yet, but doubt. That was enough. June took 1 step back, as if Mara had raised a hand to her. Mara, she whispered. Again, just her name. The same way she had said it in the kitchen. But this time, Mara did not let the grief stop her. If anything, it made her colder. Grief meant June still loved her. Love meant June might still hurt enough to hesitate. I think Carla got you scared, Mara said. And I understand. Getting older is frightening. Papers are frightening. But I have done nothing except try to help. Carla finally spoke. That's not true. Mara turned on her. You have wanted me gone since the first day you saw them, trust me. No, Carla said. I wanted them protected. From me? Yes, Carla said. The honesty should have made the room clearer. Instead, it made Pastor Eli flinch. Mara saw it and knew she had room to move. She lowered her voice. I know where I come from. I know people like you have always been waiting for me to prove I didn't belong here. That was the cruelest lie because part of it had once been true. Pastor Eli looked down. June did not. Her eyes filled, but she stood straighter. I know what you're doing, June said. Mara looked at her and almost broke, because June did know. Not every detail, not every paper, but enough. Enough to understand that the girl she had taken in was now using age, shame, and church politeness like tools laid neatly on a table. June picked up her purse. I may be old, she said, but I'm not gone. Then she walked out. No one followed immediately. That was the part Mara would remember later. Not because nobody cared, but because everyone needed 1 second to understand what had just happened. In that second, Mara won, and lost the last clean thing in her life. By evening, the whispers had begun. Not accusations yet. Questions. Was June overtired? Had Walter misunderstood? Was Carla pushing too hard? Could Mara really have done something like that after all June had done for her? Doubt spread politely in Pine Hollow. It came wrapped in concern. Mara answered every question with sadness instead of anger. She said June was under stress. She said Walter hated feeling dependent. She said Evelyn was grieving and frightened. She never called them liars. She was too smart for that. She only made their truth look fragile. Carla did not stop. She called relatives. She requested copies. She sat with Evelyn until Evelyn found the courage to say what she had signed and what she had not understood. She drove Walter to the bank herself. She went back through dates, receipts, notices, and phone calls. For the first time, someone was building a map of Mara's openings. But Mara had already crossed the line that mattered. The money could be traced. The papers could be examined. The lies could be exposed. What could not be fully repaired was the look on June's face when people who had known her for 40 years wondered, even briefly, whether her mind had begun to fail her. That was the thing Mara took, which no sentence could return. Not a house, not savings, not a signature. The dignity of being believed. And she took it from the woman who had once given her a room, a bed, and a place at the table. After that, there was no version of Mara Ellison who could still claim she had only been trying to survive. By the time the case reached sentencing, Pine Hollow had already changed. People still came to Wednesday's supper at the chapel, but they no longer left purses hanging on chairbacks. Spare keys disappeared from under flower pots. Sons and daughters who had not visited in months suddenly wanted copies of bank statements. Some came out of love. Some came out of guilt. Mara sat at the defense table with her hair pinned back and her hands folded as if stillness could make her look smaller. It did not. The evidence had done what Mara feared most. It had given shape to what people once only felt. Carla Mendez had built the map piece by piece. Dates, phone calls, bank notices, signatures, withdrawals, changed mailing addresses, conversations that had seemed harmless until placed beside one another. Evelyn Marsh testified about the day she realized the house Harold had painted for 40 years was no longer fully under her control. Walter Givens spoke only briefly. His voice broke when he said he had worn a uniform, raised a family, buried a wife, and still somehow ended his life feeling foolish in front of strangers. June Whitaker came last. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, but she did not look weak. Age had taken speed from her. It had not taken truth. She did not ask for revenge. She did not say Mara had been born bad. She did not deny the child Mara had once been. The hunger, the cold, the nights with nowhere safe to go. I loved her, June said. That is why this hurt. But loving someone does not mean letting them rename what they did. Mara closed her eyes. For the first time in years, there was no room left to move the story around herself. Her attorney asked the court to consider her childhood. He spoke of neglect, poverty, abandonment, and the systems that had noticed Mara just enough to pity her, but not enough to protect her. The judge listened. So did the victims. None of them needed to be told Mara had suffered. Many of them had helped her because they knew it. Then, Assistant District Attorney Claire Harlan stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The question before this court, she said, is not whether Mara Ellison was failed as a child. She was. The question is whether being failed gave her the right to fail 7 vulnerable people who trusted her. It did not. The sentence came after a long silence. Mara Ellison was sentenced to 32 years in state prison for financial exploitation of elderly persons, fraud, identity-related offenses, and the deliberate manipulation of vulnerable adults under her care. The judge ordered restitution, though everyone in the room understood that no number written on paper could return what had really been taken. Evelyn would not get back the years she spent believing her husband's house was safe because love had once built it. Walter would not get back the clean certainty of his own name. June would not get back the moment before her own church wondered whether her mind was failing. The others would not get back the old ease of handing someone a key, a folder, a cup of coffee, and believing help had arrived without a hook inside it. Mara asked to speak before she was led away. The judge allowed it. She stood carefully, as if the floor might tilt beneath her. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was small, not theatrical, not empty. Small. She looked toward June first, then Evelyn, then Walter. "I know that doesn't fix anything." No one answered. That was right. Forgiveness did not belong to the room. It belonged, if it ever came, to the people who had been harmed, and none of them owed it to the woman who had used their trust as shelter for her lies. Years later, people in Pine Hollow still told the story carefully, not as gossip, not as a warning against helping anyone. The town could not survive that lesson. No town can. But they spoke of Mara when churches discussed background checks, when daughters checked on widowed mothers, when old men insisted they did not need help but secretly feared the mail on their kitchen tables. Sunday, June's old gray cat was taken in by Ruthie Bell, a young woman from the chapel who had once admired Mara. The detail became small and tender, in a story with very little tenderness left. Not because a cat mattered more than ruined lives, but because Sunday had belonged to the house where Mara had first been allowed to stop running. Saving him did not undo anything. It only proved the town still knew the difference between innocence and guilt. June kept the blue room for a while. She did not rent it, did not repaint it, did not turn it into storage. For months, it remained almost exactly as Mara had left it, not because June was waiting for her to come back, but because grief sometimes needs a room before it can become memory. Eventually, she folded the quilt, emptied the drawers, and opened the window. The house breathed again. That was not a happy ending. Too much had been taken for that. Mara Ellison had been a wounded child once. That mattered. It should have mattered sooner. It should have mattered to the teachers, neighbors, church members, and systems that saw enough to worry but not enough to act. But the child who was not believed became a woman who knew exactly how belief worked. She knew how lonely people sounded when they were afraid. She knew how old hands trembled before signing papers. She knew what June's love cost. And she took it anyway. Understanding where the darkness began does not mean forgiving what it became.